Hey guys, it's Karl, and we've got it here in studio finally, the brand new 14 and 16 inch MacBook Pro featuring the M1 Pro and M1 Max. I know that's a bit of a tongue twister. We've got a ton of SKUs, a ton of different options to kind of select from, but this is essentially Apple's redesigned MacBook Pro. We'll take a look inside, see which spec that I got. You can see it's the larger model, and let's get into the box. That's the first thing. And you can already see from the box design the redesigned shape. You've got, of course, the little feet and the display with the thinner bezels and the notch to match your iPhone, because we always need a notch if you're Team Apple. You can see MacBook Pro, that will correspond to the color option, and you can also see I did get silver because I'm gonna be rocking that with my Pro Display XDR. I thought, why not match the two options, but you can either get it in that silver or in space gray. Here is the 16 incher. It's got some weight to it, and we do have a little circle on the front. I don't know if that actually means anything. Let's quickly take off this plastic, or I guess this is eco-friendly paper. And I don't think the circle on this wax paper has any actual purpose. We will put the MacBook Pro off to the side. It's hefty. You've got designed by California in Apple. If that's the first time you're seeing that, you are new to the channel. We also have a larger charging brick, and funnily enough, if you select the 14-inch option, you actually have to upgrade or pay extra for the extra wattage charging brick, and Apple kindly gives us that upgraded one for free on the 16-inch, or at least that's what they say. And this is something kind of new. It should be their new MagSafe charger. And funnily enough, it actually doesn't come with a stock USB-C cable. Once again, that's something extra you'll have to buy, because it can still charge via USB-C or the included MagSafe. That option is up to you. And I'm trying to think back, if I have my OG MacBook Pro, and I couldn't track down that MacBook, I don't think it's in my studio, but funnily enough, I did find the charger for it. So I got this pre-unibody MacBook Pro when I was in university. You can see the charger still intact, definitely a bit frayed. And if I compare the MagSafe ports, obviously they are different, but they kind of work the exact same. It's essentially a magnetic charger. That's kind of cool. And inside of the box, we just user manuals, warranty info. You get black Apple stickers with your MacBook Pro. I did not expect that, so we'll add these to the collection, but nice to see you get something a bit more unique and not just the standard white ones. Dope. That was a nice surprise. Thank you, Apple. I paid $7,000 for a laptop and I got black stickers. And before we start up the 16-inch, we'll kind of quickly take a look around. You can actually see a little engraved MacBook Pro logo on the back. The feet do stick out with the little rubber tips. You can see the big thing coming back to the sides are the ports. So you do have your MagSafe, you've got the two USB-C ports on the side, of course, still the headphone jack. And to all the creators out there, I think this is where all the hype was around. We have an HDMI port, another USB-C port, and finally that SD card slot, which if you've shot any video, if you've shot any photo, you know how annoying it is to live the dongle life. Everyone's kind of excited about it again, but let's not forget Apple took them away in the first place, and I think they should have stayed for a Pro device. You'll also see on the back, we've got some venting for the airflow. I believe in the keynote they mentioned 40 to 50%. I'll kind of confirm that number. More airflow, that will of course help with throttling to keep the machine nice and cool. It actually feels like it's designed by someone who has a proper Pro workflow, not by someone who wants the machine to look good. But let's kind of open this up for the first time. That's automatic. And as this starts up, let's get to the video sponsor, and let's be real, I need a sponsor for this episode because this was an expensive device. Thanks to Roborock for sponsoring my MacBook Pro coverage. So the Roborock S7 Plus has been my go-to robot vacuum at home, especially during Techtober. The last thing that I have to do with all these products coming in is cleaning. So I typically set this guy when I leave for my studio every morning, and by the time I get back home, my place is in way better shape than when I originally left it. The one thing that differs on this model, which makes it a bit more of a premium robot vacuum, it has a built-in mop function. So really, really handy. Link is, walking outside. He's bringing his little muddy footprints or wet footprints back into the house. This will help mop my floor before it cleans it. And it has an auto lift function for the mop when the vacuum goes onto a carpet. It's got this great self-charging docking kit, and you actually don't have to empty that for 8 weeks. So yeah, during all of Techtober, I still have yet to empty it. It's of course still cleaning my floors fine. This has got something called hyperforce suction, and I know other robot vacuums struggle with carpets, softer materials. This has kind of held up fine transitioning between materials like hardwood onto carpets. It handles ridges fine. When you use the Roborock app, you can manage all your devices, set room schedules for different days, set no-go or no mop zones. You can always change anything from anywhere and all the time on the fly. A super cool thing if you're in the market for some home tech and don't want to clean yourself, definitely recommended. Back to the MacBook Pro, and now that it's completely booted up, I'll quickly turn it around so you can see it in all of its glory. So inside it has a new redesigned keyboard. You can essentially think of this as Apple's Magic Keyboard kind of slotted into place. What I have loved, they've finally included F function keys. That's once again something that they haven't admitted that they did wrong with the touch bar. I never use that thing on my 16-inch, on any of my MacBook Pros. I prefer hard function keys. It's kind of just great to see that back again. Maybe the biggest thing I'll miss is the little emojis bar when I'm messaging someone. That's something that I can live without. You can see the completely new redesigned display, and although both of these models have 16-inch form factors, you can see how close that bezel gets to the edge of the actual device, and because of that, we unfortunately still have a notch up top. It's actually a very similar size to what you see on an iPhone. It's not gonna break your experience. It's something that you'll get used to. I kind of barely noticed it already, and that's because you do have the front-facing camera, which is now upgraded to 1080p, so now all of your FaceTime calls can be in full HD. And I'm honestly not too sure what other sensors they have on the inside. I'm sure Apple has a reasoning for the large notch. Someone comment that down below. But in terms of overall footprint, the 16-inch models are pretty much identical other than the actual thickness. So you can see the new 16-inch, it's quite a bit thicker, quite a bit chunkier. A couple reasons for that, obviously to accommodate the additional ports to ensure that there's decent enough airflow. And if you are willing to carry around a device this large, having a slightly chunkier laptop, if it helps with battery life, I'm totally down for. If it helps me not carry a dongle that kind of lives weirdly off to the side, I'm also down for that. And I'm happy to compromise on that if that just increases my performance. And I think that's what really a Pro device should be for. You can kind of quickly see which model I've got. It's the fully spec'd out version. So this is the M1 Max, of course, 16 inches. I've got 64 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes of space. And I think this is more than enough. The only way that you can spec this higher is to get 8 terabytes. And once again, Apple charges ridiculous amounts of money. And I'm quickly gonna bring up the configurator page, and I'll kind of tell you what my recommended spec to get is. The first thing that you need to decide is, I guess, of course, the color, so of course, space gray or silver, but more importantly, the 14 or 16-inch form factor. And I think I was initially on the fence of going 14-inch. You can still spec that with the M1 Max, but that runs you $700. You do get the 32-core GPU, 16-core neural engine. Honestly, I think the base model, if you're just trying to get into the new MacBook Pros, is fine. You can see 64 gigs of memory is only available with the M1 Max chip. So if that's a deal breaker for you, you kind of know you have to get the Max model, so I'll leave that at 32 gigs. Bare minimum storage, I think you at least need to get 1 terabyte for a Pro model. I'm assuming you're getting this if you're working with high-end video files, something that will take a lot of space. That 8 terabyte option for $2,200 I think is a bit ridiculous, and I would grab that 96 watt charger. That's Apple charging you 20 bucks, but do not get the $20 cleaning cloth, which I will add has a 4 to 5 week shipping delay. So whoever is buying that, stop promoting that hype. So that comes in at 2,600 bucks. I'm sure if you're in Canada, that exchange is around $3,200. Not cheap. If you decide to go for the 16-inch model, let me select silver in here because that's what I have. I would still recommend you to go for the base model. If those funky little graphs that Apple was showing off has any indication how much better that is than the M1, the M1 Pro should be able to handle, unless you are a hardcore video editor. If you do this for a living and if your company is paying for it, then yeah, get the M1 Max. But if you're creating content like this, if you're creating 4K content, even if you're shooting 8K content. According to Apple, the M1 Pro should be able to handle that. So base storage option, base processing model, 32 gigs of RAM, and the 1 terabyte of storage. That'll run you around $3,100, probably $3,700 Canadian. I'm just gonna spec mine for shits and giggles just to kind of see. It's already 4 to 5 weeks shipping, ridiculous. So 64 gigs of unified memory. I don't have the 8 terabyte storage option. I've got 2 terabytes, and this is the M1 Max model, $4,299. And if I decided to fully spec it out, you can drop $6,100 or probably $7,000, $8,000 Canadian plus tax. You could drop close to $10,000 Canadian on a MacBook Pro. That's absurd. Obviously, I would not recommend that, but if you are baller enough, you probably have ordered it already. You probably increase that shipping time. So kudos to you. I'm gonna quickly bring up some benchmarks. Really curious how Geekbench compares on this. Okay, we've got it downloaded, and because I was able to do a bit of movie magic, I actually started editing this very video on this machine. It's butter. It was so silky smooth. It's the fastest machine that I've used. And I am coming from my older M1 MacBook Pro, and I did use the 16-inch MacBook Pro since it kind of came out. This is on its own level just from my initial testing, but it kind of should be for that kind of money. There should be a little magic button that should be like edit all my videos for 10,000 bucks. You should edit all of my YouTube videos on your own. I was actually chatting about that with Lou on Unbox Therapy on his Lou Later podcast.
I mean, I can imagine if all of a sudden you hit a button and your video was edited and there was some innovation that...
Take my money.
Exactly,
yeah.
But
this kind of money for a machine, as I guess like a tech reviewer, we kind of are numb to it because we're getting all these new devices. Spending 10 grand on a laptop is not normal. If you have that kind of money, by all means, it's a great device. I've kind of given you my recommended specs in and around that $3,000 mark, which is still so much money. It should still have that magic edit button. Anyways, here are the Geekbench scores for everyone wondering. Probably the best scores that I've seen. 12,691 for the multi-core score. That is nuts. Full testing of this device will kind of take place over the next kind of couple of weeks. This will be my main new editing rig. All of the vids that you see on the channel should be kind of done on this and kind of paired with the Pro Display XDR. Hope you guys enjoyed this vid, and if you did pick up a new MacBook Pro, let me know which model you got. I will say for the 16-inch, one extra benefit you get is the extra battery life. I think you get 5 to 6 more hours over the 14-inch, and if you also did manage to afford one, let me know which body part you sold on the black market. We'll catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace!